Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Clear here with a first impressions video, and today I've got a Spyderco that I have really been looking forward to, guys. This, of course, is the Spyderco Shaman. Now, there's Sal Glesser's Maker's Mark right there. You can see that this knife is quite a bit bigger than the Spyderco Native, which is sort of its precursor, if you will. And you know, when Spyderco started talking about or telling us about what this knife was going to be like, I've got to say I was pretty stoked right from the start. So I'm going to try not to let my excitement, you know, overflow too much in this video. But really, guys, if Spyderco had called me and said, like, what would you like us to do with the Native? This is pretty well what I would have described. So full disclosure, I am really loving this knife. There are a couple things, though, that I'm going to touch on as we go through that maybe could be a little better. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the features. I'll go through that, and then I'll give you a size and weight on this guy. And I am going to measure the blade as well. I normally don't do that in first impressions, but this blade is thicker than a lot of Spyderco, so I thought I'd go ahead and take a quick measurement on that while we're kind of taking a look at this guy. Let's see here. We've got S30V blade steel with a stonewash finish. Notice it's not a full flat grind, which is interesting to me. I mean, it's fine that it isn't, but it's just, you know, I sort of associate full flat grinds with Spyderco, so it was interesting to see that this was not one. The bearing here is phosphor bronze washers, compression lock, which again I really like. 3D machined G10. So take a look at that nicely contoured G10. That is really nicely done, and it's definitely an extra sort of, you know, an extra touch of quality that I do really appreciate. Since we're looking at it, let's take a quick look at that clip. Notice that it is stonewashed to match the blade, and it's four-way repositionable. They went with sort of the tenacious style clip, which I don't love, but certainly is very workable, and sort of does that thing where it wraps around the lanyard hole. I'm not a lanyard hole guy, so to me that takes away from the whole design a little bit, but it's certainly not the end of the world by any stretch. Let's go ahead, and I know a couple of you have commented, man, you say not the end of the world a lot, so I'm trying to say it less, but you'll have to forgive me. Anyway, take a look here. We've got milled, although not heavily milled, stainless steel liners that are nested into those G10 scales. I've got to say, again, really nice touch. Just adds an extra level of quality to that. And then a stainless steel backspacer. Now, I will say, take a look at the fit and finish on that backspacer. Notice how it's kind of recessed in a little bit, which is not ideal. Let me know if you've got one of these, if yours is like that as well. It's not the end of the world. It really affects nothing in terms of the function of the knife, but as a fit and finish issue, I do definitely notice it. And it's a little off-putting, especially considering the Mannix. Remember when we had the Mannix lockback? It's a Golden Colorado Spyderco. By the way, this is a Golden Colorado Spyderco. And the Mannix was a Golden Colorado, and the fit and finish was absolutely exacting on that knife. So a little disappointing, I guess, to see this guy without that. Now, it is a little stiff on the action, but I'm going to work on it, break it in a little bit, and take this apart and clean it up as well. And so I suspect that that action will be very different the next time you see this knife on screen. Okay, let's go ahead and grab some measurements. Okay, starting with an overall measurement, this guy is going to be 8 and pretty well exactly 8 1/4 inches. Blade length is pretty well exactly 3 5/8. You can see there's the 3, there's 3 5/8. Cutting edge is going to be somewhere, so just under 3 1/4 on the cutting edge. That's an approximation, of course. And finally, the overall length on this guy is going to be almost 4 3/4 inches, just about a 1/16 under, so call it 11/16, I guess. Pretty good sizes there. You know, those are all kind of the numbers we would expect to see on a good EDC knife. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab the calipers here and see if I can get a quick thickness behind the edge. Now this is going to be difficult to do reaching around a camera, but I'll do my best. The problem isn't the reach, the problem is making sure that I'm in exactly the right location on the blade to give you guys a good accurate reading. All right, so that looks pretty darn close. So about 27 thousandths behind the edge. Maybe check it in one more spot to see if that's about the same. And yeah, 29, I could be, again, without being able to get the blade right kind of up in front of me. So around 27, 28 thousandths behind the edge. The blade stock itself, this will be a little easier number to get, 145 thousandths on the blade stock, which is, again, a little thicker than we're used to seeing from Spyderco. With those measurements in mind, I think this knife is going to cut pretty darn well and be and this is something I often say, I feel like a broken record maybe, but it's going to be, I think, a pretty well balanced knife. So offer us a really good sort of pairing between cutting power and toughness with that thicker steel. All right, let's grab the weight on this guy and then I'll give you my sort of overall take. 5.2 ounces, 5.22 ounces, I guess. That's pretty nice. It's obviously quite a bit heavier than something like, say, the Para 2, but not the end of the world, right? There I go again. But yeah, not something that I'm going to make an issue out of and say, oh, it's so heavy, I just can't deal with it. I don't find this knife to be too heavy at all. And given the construction, I think that number is pretty reasonable. So what's my overall take on this knife? Well, listen, guys, what I would call this is a pretty quintessential Spyderco. For one, I love that it ties right into the Spyderco family. You've got the compression lock, you've got the mostly flat grind, you've definitely got a knife that looks a lot like a native. But I would say that compared to most Spydercos, it's going to be a little more heavy duty, maybe something more like the Mannix. It's just heavier construction, heavier blade stock. Everything about this is just a little beefed up. And I really like that. If you guys have been around this channel for long, you know that I definitely prefer that kind of knife. So I think I'm really going to enjoy this one. Of course, you're going to want to like and subscribe so that you don't miss anything coming up, including the full review of this knife, which will probably be, I don't know, about a month's time. I may give this one a little more time just because I love it so much that I'm going to try to wait for that sort of initial honeymoon phase to wear off. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.